Okay, so let's get started talking about pre-writing and then organizing our pre-writing into an outline for this essay. Okay, so we did our pre-writing together in class. I'm just going to show that to you, what that looked like. Okay, so I printed out the prompt for everybody, and then we just kind of went through brainstorming everything that we could think about inside the books about that prompt. So we talked about education first, and as I was thinking, the word opportunity came to mind, but basically I'm just kind of talking about both books deal with education, and I'm listing out all of those things, right? So Joe talks about his guidance counselor, about how she says, he talks about how she never pushed college for him, but then he decides to go to community college and he eventually goes to university. Talked about some of the issues that Joe has in school, balancing work life and school, but eventually he plans to drop out because he's taking care of Jeremy, and then he is saved by the reward money. He gets to stay. So and then Brandon doesn't talk about money as much. There's some in there about his mom and using the GI Bill to pay for his school after he flunks out and stuff. He talks mostly about behavior issues. He talks briefly about how he got through high school because his teachers padded his grades. That quote's on page 100. But once he got to university, right, he goes the first time for basketball, injures himself, his basketball career is over. He flunks out, right? He's got all W's and F's on his transcript. Tries to commit suicide and then returns. When he returns, his advisor puts him in remedial classes. He wrestles with cheating. His English teacher confronts him after plagiarizing a paper. And he learns, and his English teacher helps him compensate for his lack of knowledge, right? So he learns how to study, he learns how to read, he learns how to look up words that he doesn't know and put them in his vocabulary. And so when I'm looking at the two stories here about Joe and Brandon, what I see here in the first bit, right? Joe doesn't talk a whole lot about knowledge and how he lacks knowledge. There's a little bit about how he feels uncomfortable in school, but money is his main issue, right? He is having a hard time staying in school because it costs a lot of money, and eventually because of other responsibilities. But the main thing with school that he talks about is not he can't go because of family, but he can't go because he has to take care of Jeremy, so he can't work and go to school. Earn money for school. Then with Brandon, he doesn't talk as much about money and talks more about knowledge and just the barriers that he has about knowledge in school and the skills that are required to be successful in school, like studying and writing and analyzing things. And so we see with Joe, mostly money issue, Brandon, mostly knowledge issue, although they both do address those things. And so I kind of started here with maybe a tentative thesis statement. Opportunity that comes from education requires money, knowledge, and grit. So that's kind of where I'm starting as far as my pre-writing for this essay, right? And pre-writing is so important. Do not skip this step, okay? Because what pre-writing does is it helps you identify what you're going to talk about. It helps you make sure you have enough to talk about or not too much, right? This is just a 600 to 800 word essay. I can't say everything I want to say about this book. So take a few minutes and complete your pre-writing. Once you have completed your pre-writing, let's organize it into a beautiful outline. Okay, here's my outline. I put up here at the top just my prompting, so I'd be reminded about what it is. And how I've been teaching you to do outlines, right? For Roman numeral 1, we just have the word introduction. You don't write your whole introduction, you just write your thesis statement. And as I was working on that, I really thought more about how these men had these barriers to education, right? And how they overcame them. And so that's where I landed. My thesis as it stands now is in the books, The Life We Bury by Ellen Eskens and Miseducated by Brandon Fleming. Joe and Brandon experience barriers to education that they must overcome to graduate. So that's my main idea, right? They overcome these barriers. And so my point one is going to be money. And I told you in the prompt video, I am doing where I have my 3 points, and then for each A and B, I talk about a character from The Life We Bury and a character from Miseducated, right? The same character. They're both going to be Joe and Brandon, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to establish that point, what it's about. This one is about money, and then I'm going to talk about Joe, and then I'm going to talk about Brandon. So what I've done now is I've gone through my books and found all of my quotes. Well, not all. I chose the best quotes about each of these to kind of help me figure out what I'm going to talk about. Okay, so Joe talks about working to pay his through money, and he talks about risking next semester's tuition when he bails his mom out. So he's got those quotes there about bailing his mom out. But because of the reward money, Joe doesn't have to drop out of college. He has a way to pay for it. So he says to Lila, with that money, I could go back to school and take care of Jeremy. Keep track of your page numbers. You're going to have to write those in your in-text citations. All right, then I have Brandon. I talk about how Brandon plans to pay for college with an athletic scholarship, right? He's going to play basketball, but he hurts his knee before the scholarship is rewarded. They kind of cut him loose from the team. He stays that semester, but anyway, so this is talking about how he injured himself, lost that opportunity for an athletic scholarship. And then when he funks out of college and his mom comes to him and says that she wants him to go back to school, he tells her that he can't because he can't get financial aid and there's no other way to pay for it. And so she says, I want you to use my GI Bill. This quote, as I have it right now, is probably a little bit too long. I'm gonna try to start it at mom and see if then it'll fit. You really can only have 4 lines of in-text citation in this essay. So I wanna just check that as I start working on my essay. But there we go. Money is my point. Then we got Joe money. Then we got Brandon money, right? At the end, I'm gonna have my transition sentence. That sentence sums up this paragraph and introduces the next paragraph. Remember, we're just trying to create a nice flow for our reader through the essay. Joe and Brandon are given money for college, but they have to have knowledge to be successful there. I really did not read this. Okay. My second point is going to be knowledge. My topic sentence, right? I'm going to go ahead and write that down. The sentence that covers everything in the whole paragraph. Joe and Brandon find a way to get the knowledge they lack in order to be successful in college and beyond, right? So that second barrier of that they were not taught the things that they needed to know to be successful in college. Joe identifies with that. He says he's not comfortable there. Brandon, right, he talks about this imposter syndrome. English was too hard, so she helped him do it. How hard it was to read, how he couldn't sit and read for a long time, how he had to look up a bunch of words. So I've got those quotes in there to kind of bolster that, to prove my point that they both need knowledge. My transition sentence, Joe and Brandon acquire new knowledge and practice new skills and improve their sense of belonging at the university, and in that process they demonstrate grit. Okay, so my last barrier that they overcome is a lack of grit, and they have to both show grit in a way that they haven't before in order to be successful. So with Joe, I don't have a quote about that from the book. I'm just going to have to talk about how in the same way that he is gritty, like persistent about solving Carl's case, right? We know that as he's developed that ability, then that would transfer to school. You don't actually see him being successful in this book. In the sequel, The Shadows We Hide, he is successful in school, so I'm not just like making that up. He does graduate college and has a great job. Okay, and then Brandon, I love this quote where he talks about struggling to read and practicing that new vocabulary. He really shows us a roadmap of what grittiness in college looks like. So that's there. And then you just have the word conclusion. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to look at the details in the text, see how they relate to each other, how they are connected, what they're proving, what they're saying. You can look for things that are there, things that aren't there. We talked about in our class today how if we wanted to talk about fatherhood, well, Joe doesn't have a dad, but you could talk about that absence of a father figure and how it impacted him. Although we also decided we would identify Joe as a father figure. He really does everything that dads are supposed to do for Jeremy, protects him, provides for him, keeps him safe. So anyway, I can't wait to see your outlines. Those will be due next week, as well as the rough draft. Good luck.